Welcome to the Lounge of Travefy Academy, where we get to hear from travel industry voices and experts to learn more about their story and what they see on the horizon for travel professionals. I'm Stephanie Grice, and our guest today is Leah Greengarten, founder and chief experience officer of Our Travel Curator. So welcome to the Lounge, Leah, and thanks for joining us from Australia. Look at this beautiful background there.
Hi, Steph. Thank you so much. Welcome to Bronte Beach. I'm doing an interview as I do my morning walk. So thank you so much for having me. I'm going to give you a little look-see of where we are, which is down in Bronte Beach, which is about a 15-minute walk from my house. It's the middle of winter and there's people surfing and swimming, and it's about 9 degrees, which for us is really cold.
Yeah, you're all bundled up. You're right.
Yes.
Oh, it looks so beautiful. Well, thank you for taking us on your morning walk today, too. Really appreciate that. But I'd love to hear more about you, too. So can you just share a little bit more about yourself, but also really, how did you get in the travel industry?
Okay, well, I have been in the travel industry probably for close to 2 decades, which makes me sound really old. But I started out as an intern at the Sunday Times travel magazine in London. And that was really my first introduction to the travel industry. I always knew I wanted to work in the travel industry because I just loved travel. So that kind of kicked off my career at a place called River Publishing in Leicester Square. And then from there, I worked as a travel writer for 7 years. And I actually ended up writing for the New York Times after I did a paid internship at the International Herald Tribune in Paris. So that's kind of how I started my travel career. And then after I decided I didn't want to be a travel writer anymore, I moved into destination publicity, where I worked as a destination publicist at Tourism New Zealand, which was an amazing job, and promoting what we call the land of the long white cloud. So that was really exciting. And then after that, I took, I guess what you could call is like a sabbatical. I just took a year off and wanted to do something really different and moved to the Australian outback, which is the Red Centre, which is pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And it was an amazing experience where I ended up writing every day, and I was writing for publications in the cities like Escape, which is the travel insert for the Daily Telegraph. And I was working and producing video content for Qantas in flight channels. So I kind of was like a city girl hustling in the outback and kind of just making it up as I went. And it was just kind of awesome.
That is really cool. So then what made you decide that you wanted to start planning travel and selling it?
So that was all kind of an accident. Pre-pandemic, I was creating video footage for Qantas. And as we know, all airlines sort of, fell apart, and I needed to pivot. So I took a lot of time off. I probably took like 6 months off, where I joined a program called JobKeeper, which is a government program. And I used that time to kind of, it was the Australian government's way of helping people that had been let go or didn't have enough work. So I used that time to write, and I wrote for 6 months. And then I got to a point where I was like, I really need to be working. And I wrote a post on Facebook just saying, I am looking to go to the Blue Mountains and I can't find accommodation anywhere. I work in the travel industry, but I just can't find accommodation. Is anyone else having these issues? If you are, I'm happy to help. And people wrote to me that I hadn't spoken to in 20 years, and people tagged friends. And anyway, I ended up helping all these people, and I thought, well, why don't I just charge them? And so I started charging an hourly rate. And from there, the business has grown to a proper business where we curate unique and bespoke local escapes and experiences. So it's all local stuff. And it's for people that are time poor, but really want a great adventure or an amazing experience. And that's kind of how it's evolved.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And would you say too, being a writer and a journalist first, is there anything that you think that you had to do in those job roles that helps your business grow?
Absolutely. Like if I hadn't have been producing film shoots, I wouldn't have been able to produce travel because I curate people's local escapes like I'm producing a film clip, you know? So I make sure that there's always a sunrise activity, that there's always a sunset activity, because I'm always thinking, how will it look on camera? You know, how will it look on Instagram for these people? And basically just making it as beautiful as possible. But there's also, like, when you're a producer, there's a lot of logistics that you need to consider. And that is what kind of weaves a good travel itinerary together. So yeah, as a producer, yes. And then, you know, being a writer, you're kind of always creating content, you know, with Instagram, with EDMs, you know, it's the way, you know, it's just like running a business. And for me, it's easy, but for someone else, it might be a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I think both being a writer and a producer has really helped the business grow. We've only been around for 10 months, but over that period, like, it's like I'm now running a proper business.
Wow. See, I would have never known it's only been for 10 months. That's amazing. That's really cool. And so that's what I was actually going to ask you is how has with the pandemic and everything, and it's kind of, started during the pandemic, and what is the future looking like right now? Is there anything that your company's been focusing on, or anything that you found has been helpful to keep doing during this time?
Yeah. So the reason my business has been a success is because of the pandemic. So Australians are only allowed to travel locally. And at the moment, it's very hard to find local accommodation. And my clients don't have time to look for accommodation or experiences. So, my business has three verticals, and one of them is local escapes, experiences, and virtual reality travel. So, depending on where we are with the pandemic is dependent on which of those verticals is doing the best. So at the moment, a lot of big travel organizations are, kind of coming back. Like I went to a conference this week. I went to the Australian Tourism Exchange, which is a huge conference put on by Tourism Australia. And, every tourism board is there, every experience operator is there. And interestingly, I'm potentially working with a big travel company that wants to do more virtual reality travel. So this is going back to my roots of being a producer. So, but during the beginning, like maybe 6 months ago, local escapes was really taking off. Oh my God, sorry, my dog is pulling me down a hill. But the local escapes they always kind of just hum along. And then what I'm really, really excited about is the experiences where we tap into masters. So instead of doing a surfing lesson with just a surfing lesson teacher, you're doing a surfing lesson with a world famous surfer. So that's really cool. So I've tapped into all these masters. Like I've just organized a retreat for 8 entrepreneurs on Rottnest Island in Western Australia. And I'm setting up a yoga class with this incredible politician who I don't want to mention yet because it's not 100% confirmed. But she's this amazing woman who loves yoga, is a really big politician in Australia. And I just reached out to her through Instagram and just said, look, I'm organizing this entrepreneurs retreat. Would you like to come and do a yoga class and talk about, the power of resilience? And she wrote back and she's like, absolutely, tell me more details, and gave me her EA's details. So it's all about really unique experiences, but tapping into these masters.
That is so awesome. That's really cool. So how'd you come up with that idea and the virtual reality? I have to ask about that. That's so cool. How did you come up with those ideas, and how did you even start that?
I think, I'm an ideas person, my cousin always says to me, she's like, you just vomit ideas. It's not the nicest way to describe it, but it's the way that my brain is kind of like, I don't know, set up. And it kind of started happening. This entrepreneurs organization came to me and said, we just want to offer our members something really exciting. Can you come together with an idea? And I just thought, okay, well, I don't remember exactly how it came to me, but it was a brief that came from an entrepreneurs organization. And I just fit that. I just made it up, I guess.
That is really, I love that. So with virtual reality, what do you think the future of that looks like? Because I know I've been to conferences years ago where they were talking about it, and I wasn't like some companies kind of would take it on, but it still hasn't been anything you see everywhere yet. So what do you think that the future of it's looking like?
I think we're kind of at its infancy in terms of how my business is positioning it. It's not just about the VR video content. It's about tapping into those five senses. So sound, touch, hear, all those senses, smell. So it's not just putting on a headset. It might be putting on a headset and going on the shot over jet in New Zealand. That's the visual, but there's audio, but then there's someone spraying you with water on the outside, or like we really have to tap into all those senses and not forget, and like really be creative with how we do it, and make it an experience that is memorable, because so many of these travel agents are used to going on for mills, which I don't know if you use that word in America, but it's like a press conference or to get to know the country. But it's kind of like the famil is coming to them, so they can sell those products more easily because they've experienced it visually, audio, they've been sprayed by water, which is like coming off the shot over jet. They can smell, nature. So it's tapping into all those five senses.
That sounds awesome. It's really smart. I didn't even think about for other company destination marketing places, to come to conferences where travel agents are, and they can set up a room where you have that and you can experience instead of going on those trips. And we usually call them fam trips. So pretty much the same thing. Yep. Yeah. So that's really awesome. I love that. That's cool. I just had to ask about the virtual reality because that's pretty sweet. That's really
well, I'll keep you posted on it.
Yes, please do. I wish that it would have been further along during the pandemic, because that was something, well, I think a lot of people did, because I know that it's become more accessible that you can buy cheaper headsets and use your phone. So that's really cool. But yeah, that is really cool. Those are the questions I had because I was so fascinated by your story, but we're not done yet. We have rapid fire questions. Are you ready? But before we do rapid fire questions, can we see your little coworker?
Oh yeah, this is my head of business development. Frida, come and say hello. That's Frida. And she's my little sausage dog that I got pre-pandemic. Actually, there's been like a puppy pandemic. Well, not a puppy pandemic, but everyone's gotten puppies in Sydney. But I got Frida 2 months before the pandemic. And I call her head of business development because she stops people as we're walking, and I end up talking to those people, and sometimes they end up coming on as clients and sometimes they don't, but she really is like icebreaker to meeting strangers.
That's a great marketing tactic.
I know.
Guerrilla marketing. Yeah. If you don't already have a dog, get one and then just walk around. That's perfect. And one last question for you, actually, because a lot of our listeners might be from US and Canada and Europe, but what's it looking like I know Australia has like been doing pretty well for quite a while. So what is it like right now?
So actually it's like, just look around, like it's kind of everyone's, it's normal life, like no one's wearing, no, there's not that many people actually, but there's no one wearing a mask. Sydney has been very lucky and managed the whole situation very well. Our brothers and sisters in Melbourne have had a much tougher time. They've just come out of their fourth lockdown in a year. Whereas we only had one. Look, I think the Australian government has done an amazing job of, controlling this pandemic. We haven't done an amazing job at rolling out the vaccine. So, I think that's an opportunity for us to do better at. But, I'm getting my vaccine next month. My partner's having his this morning. So everyone's kind of getting it slowly but surely, but it's just taking a lot longer. But yeah, I'm very proud and feel very lucky how we've managed this whole pandemic.
Yeah. And can travelers, I know right now it still is it costs quite a bit of money for a traveler to come in, like for me to go in there.
Yeah.
Is it still like
Yeah.
that? And it will probably remain like that for a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah. So there's no leisure travelers coming in, obviously, but we've just opened up to international students again. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is in Singapore today, and he is talking about opening up a travel bubble with Singapore. So I think that slowly we'll start. We have a travel bubble with New Zealand, which is super exciting. But then, there's always a risk in traveling. So if there's an outbreak in Sydney, then New Zealand might close the border to Australia. But I always tell people you have to plan. Like, you just can't not plan. Like, you have to travel because, travel is what makes life so exciting. And, you just pivot, and you plan the next thing, but you can't just stay at home and not travel because, traveling is so fun.
I know. It keeps you sane and it keeps you
refreshed
and all. Yeah, totally.
Refreshed and inspired,
Yeah, exactly. It really does. And even just seeing your background right now is just so nice, just something different.
Yeah, there's a guy standing on his head.
Oh, I see.
So Sydney.
Oh my gosh.
Sydney. Someone doing yoga on the shores.
I love it. So anyone who's listening on the audio version, come check out our video on YouTube so you can see what we're talking about, what we are seeing. It's pretty great. But okay, so I have some fun questions for you. So we always like to do this is rapid fire questions. I think there's 6 here. And
okay.
And if you need to pass on any, let me know. But they should be pretty easy. So to give you an idea of how they're going to work, this is the first question. What is your favorite travel movie?
My favorite travel movie. Oh my God, that's a hard question. The first thing that comes to mind is the Eat, Pray, Love movie with Julia Roberts, because, I think that she travels through 3 different really interesting countries, India, Italy, and Indonesia. So I think that was just a beautiful movie.
Yes, I know. That I'd have to say that's mine. That is probably the top answer on that. And I can totally get behind it because it's perfect. I love that movie. Okay, so another question is, what is your favorite destination that you've traveled to?
My favorite destination is Palm Springs in California. I'm obsessed with Frank Sinatra and that kind of music from that era. And I feel like going to Palm Springs is a step back in time.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes. Come back to the States. We'll love to have you.
Yes.
So what would you say is the most underrated destination to visit?
Oh, I know. Ningaloo Reef, which is off the coast of Western Australia. It's kind of the lesser known cousin of the Barrier Reef. So everybody knows the Barrier Reef, but not everybody knows Ningaloo Reef. And Ningaloo Reef is where you go to swim with whale sharks, which, no joke, are as big as a double-decker bus. So and they eat plankton. So they don't eat humans. So you jump off a boat and there's a helicopter above the boat that's looking for these whale sharks. And it is the most godly experience. You feel like a speck of dust when you're swimming next to them. And they're really playful. And that, for me, is the most incredible travel experience and also very underrated.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That is nice. So what is the best meal that you've had while traveling?
The best meal? That's a hard one because there's so many. And I do love my food. The first place that comes to mind is this tiny little Michelin-starred dumpling place in Hong Kong. It's like a hole in the wall. And I went there with a friend of mine, Katie Bowman, who was the features writer at the Sunday Times Travel magazine. And she took me there, and it was just so authentic. It was tiny. The line was like, 2 kilometers long. And it wasn't fancy, and that's what I love. I don't love fancy places. I love like the really genuine, authentic food experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when they're good, yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
And okay, so final question for you, and this is a very good one since you come from the writing world, is what is the last great book or article that you read?
Oh, Ernest Hemingway's A Movable Feast, set in Paris, is by far my favorite travel book. While you're reading it, you can like smell the croissants, you can smell the boulangerie, you can smell the fromagerie. Like, it is so vivid. That is my favorite travel book. And in terms of like just reading about travel, I really love Skift, Skift. And that is an American publication. And there's always interesting articles on there about trends. And that kind of keeps me informed about the industry.
Yeah, that's all. Yep, you can sign up for their newsletter. I get that. And it's really good, very informative and a great one. So glad you mentioned that. I like that. Yeah, no, that is awesome. Well, I just have to say thank you so much for taking us into a little piece of your world over there. So amazing. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Lounge of Travefy Academy. And special thanks to our guest, Leah, for joining us here today. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast or subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of the latest episodes. We hope you enjoyed this conversation today and join us again. But for now, stay safe and we'll catch you on the next flight.